Hi everyone, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the Zandvoort Circuit, the Circuit Park Zandvoort here on the coast of the Netherlands for race 2 in the GT4 European Series Northern Cup. And you can see the cars beginning to assemble on the grid after what I think it's fair to say was a really rather eventful race yesterday. In fact, the race organisers working furiously to try and ascertain exactly the penalties and various other awards following what was, as I say, a very, very lively race with a packed grid of superb cars. 50-minute race that we saw yesterday that was actually won by our pole sitters, Phil Glue and Charlie Fagg, that will be going, as I say, from P1 on the grid today. Alongside me, motorsport journalist Lee O'Gorman. I'll tell you what, we were riveted to the screens and riveted to the window because it was extraordinary, wasn't it? There were places changing and all sorts of incidents yesterday.
I think exciting race is one way to put it. It was definitely incident-filled, and we saw some very good driving. We saw some very good overtaking. We also saw some driving that was possibly less desirable, shall we say? But I mean,
that's always the case, though, isn't it? When you've got, you know, let's be honest. There are two championships here. There's the championship for the pro drivers, and then there's the Pro-Am championship as well, where the car is shared.
And we also have the Am championship.
Of course.
So we got three classes. As you said, one of them is pro. So we have a situation where you got all these cars, apart from one or two, where it's all pro drivers. And then you have the Pro-Am class, which is you want to have one professional driver and one amateur driver. And then you have the Am class, which is, as it says, two amateur drivers. So, I mean, you're not going to expect the level, say, that we would see in Formula 3 or DTM, the other categories that we're seeing this race weekend. But we are seeing definite differences of ability and talent. And, you know, that was really resulted in a wonderful result yesterday for Phil Glue and Charlie Fagg, who took the race lead very late on with an incident between the two then leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And bear in mind that Phil Glue and Charlie Fagg, also had a drive-through penalty, which they took and still managed to come out. This is or that was the pole sitter for the Pro-Am class, as we're making our way through the grid now for this 50-minute race. Lennart Marianek in the KTM Crossbow then, P3 on the grid from a 1:47.480, gives him P3. As you can see, the car engineered by the Reiter engineering team. And we continue our tour down the grid, and we see the CMR team's car and driver standing by, Niels Stevenart, the Ginetta G55 GT4. I have to say, these G55s are great-looking cars, and something that is unique, perhaps, across the GT4 European Series is the fact that, as we look at Paolo Maloney in the Maserati, it was Christian Danner that was talking there, as Christian Danner will be second driver in the race following the mandatory pit stop with the driver change. Christian Danner, who you will never see without a smile on his face, a fantastic driver and a fantastic guy as well. Sorry, gone off at tangents here. The breadth and depth of the incredible cars that are on the grid is one to behold as we look at the Maserati MCGT4 of Paolo Meloni. Maloney then sharing that car with Tresoldi, and the cars, well, that camera angle doesn't really do it justice in terms of the depth of this grid.
Listen to this, Dave. Porsche Cayman CSMR, Aston Martin Vantage, Ecris M4, McLaren 570 GT4, the KTM X-Bow GT4.
Is it X-Bow or is it Crossbow? I've always said Crossbow. As we're looking at Gabriella Piana, who, of course, also competes in the Carrera Cup Deutschland. Max Cobalt there in the Ecris M4 GT4. Now, at the beginning of the race yesterday, you will recall that the BMW led, and it was Ricardo van der Ende, wasn't it? And who was the starting driver yesterday. And then there was this, the Phil Glue, Charlie Fagg car just appeared to run into the back of it, didn't it?
Yeah, we had it seemed like a couple of laps where the Van Rende car seemed to lose a little bit of pace. Phil Glue drove up to the back of the number 8 Ecris M4, and coming into the first corner, just seemed to almost just drive into the back of Van Rende, spun him around.
Yes.
Glue got a drive-through penalty, and I think this is where luck played a part as well, because not long after that, there was a safety car after the penalty was taken, and it did bring Charlie Fag, Phil Glue kind of back into the race to a degree. And eventually winning the race when another incident between the Equipe Vasseur car of Saba Moore and the RYS Team KTM car of Ike Engelmeyer had a clash, actually on screen now.
Engelmeyer that we're looking at now.
They had a clash in the chicane just before the final set of corners, and that actually allowed Charlie Fag to take the lead, and allowed Sillyhaug to take second place as well.
An extraordinary race that, if you're a race fan, it was absolutely filled from start to finish with action, that's for sure. So we hear the klaxon go off now. The grid will gradually be cleared as Laura Crayhammer then in the KTM Crossbow there, going from P11 on the grid for the number 74 car, engineered, of course, by the RIS team, True Racing. And there are one or two cars that are missing on the grid today following damage that was sustained yesterday. One of those was that glorious Aston Martin Vantage, I believe.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shocking crash, as it were. Late on.
Yes. In fairness, that caused the race to be concluded under the safety car, didn't it?
And it was a big crash. It went into the... It was in 8th place. We went to overtake the 7th place driver. Overshot the first corner completely. Hit the driver in 6th place, which is I believe it was Andy Merrick. No, it wasn't Andy Merrick's car. It was but sustained severe front end damage. With seeing a lot of damage to the radiator, maybe to the engine, and that really caused the race to be red flagged. And it was so much damage that was it for that particular driver.
Okay, here comes the grid in full for you then, and of course it's starting drivers for those. It's not every car that has 2 drivers across it. There are some that are single competitors. They of course still have to take the mandatory pit stop. And you can just see the back end of the Villorba Corsa car of Manuela Gosner, who is one of those single drivers. And the car's being led around here, and another one of the single drivers, if you like, is Flashkoff, isn't it? Going from further up the grid, P13, Manuela Gosner back down there, P24. Okay, so Fag and Glue, Sillyhaug and Van den Belt. Then it's Marinek and Maya, Steviana and Ayari, Melanie and Tresoldi. Then it's Gabriella Piana. And then the rest of the grid, as you can see, the screen scrolls quicker than we can talk about it. But in truth, as you look at P17, Luke Brahms and Duncan Huysman.
They're one of the big names in this level of racing.
And we would expect to go forward.
And the same with the P25. Patrick and Merrick, we'll see them climbing up the order pretty quickly as well as Jasper.
Another one to keep an eye on is the Momo Megatron Paytrax Porsche Cayman, which is driven by Bernhard Laber in the first stint of the race, and then will be taken over by one Mr. Christian Danner.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Really? Yeah. You're the only person then. So the car's weaving from side to side to try and generate some temperature into the tyres. They've got a very early morning slot, haven't they? It's local time. It's just on 9:45 here. And the track layout then, this 4.3 kilometre circuit, which features some 13 turns. 4 of them are left-handers, 9 of them are right-handers. And it's what everyone describes as an old-school circuit. By old school, we mean there are no large acres of tarmac safety runoff areas. It's gravel and grass and dunes and sand, because we are within a underarm throw, aren't we, from the North Sea?
Absolutely, and as mentioning the wind, something that blows a lot of sand onto the track here at Zandvoort on a particularly windy day. It's not as bad as it was yesterday, as we see the cars begin to line up in a 2x2 formation. Now, this is where the GT4 Northern Series, European Series Northern Cup differs from the rest of the races we have this weekend, who will all have standing starts. This, of course, as I said, 2x2 formation, so it will be a rolling start off the grid as the The rows are lining up now, and you can see some of the cars just catching up the main pack. It's very slow, as we're going to have effectively 16 rows of cars starting this race. It's going to be very feisty coming down the start-finish straight and into turn one.
So as Lee has suggested then, the Aston Martin that is controlling the pace of the rolling lap to begin with. Once the race stewards are happy that the cars are in their correct formation side by side, then the safety car will peel off into what is a short run into the pit lane here at Zandvoort, and then it will be the responsibility of Charlie Fagg and Vanden then on the front row of the grid to control the pace of the rolling start as they head towards the gantry now. The lights are at the top of the gantry, as you can see. Yesterday, we did not get away from the first formation lap. The race control team were unhappy. Today, they're very happy, and it's all systems go as we get the greens, and it's a good start from the Phil Glue car being driven by Charlie Fagg in the first stint of this race then, as they can't all go into turn number one, which is a real pinch point here around the Tarzan turn.
And I believe Marinek has actually taken Celia Haug for second place coming into turn one. Celia Haug was very light, shall we say, coming through that long Tarzan bender, and it allowed Marinek through to take that second position for the moment. Charlie Fagg leads this early stage.
Absolutely, did everything absolutely right in the start, and already trying to make progress up the order. You can see the Ecris Motorsport M4 of Max Cobalt then, who starts this race in that BMW, furiously flashing his lights, trying to almost just lose the focus or get the driver ahead of him to lose focus so that he makes a mistake and he can move up another place. So lots to watch, and there is that Ecris Motorsport BMW under pressure though from the KTM Crossbow, right behind that KTM Crossbow being driven by Ike Angermeyer, who we were talking about earlier on, racing of course in the Silver Cup.
And of course coming up the order, having taken a bit of a knock. He did a penalty yesterday after that race, a drop of 7 positions following that clash they had with the number 10 car at the end of yesterday's race. So there's a dive up the inside.
Oh, that was a great move by the G55 then, up the inside going into the chicane, and that was Stevie Art. Brilliant driving, and that's put that car into P3 now.
Taking third place there in the race, and very good move. Opportunistic, saw the gap coming and made sure it was nailed.
Absolutely, made it Ginetta G55 wide. It's not easy to overtake here on this Zandvoort circuit, it has to be said. However, that proved that it can be done. So the order then, as you can see, is Fagg, Celia Haug, then it's Stevianart, Marinek, Piana, Gabriella Piana up to P5, Lutweiler, Moore, and Melanie is P8 as they go into turn number one for the second time of asking. Cobalt and Angermeyer complete the top 10. The order on screen scrolling through for you. Manuela goes to P24.
Marinek did seemingly make a mistake in the final sector on that lap. Actually dropped 6/10 in the middle sector and then another 7/10 in sector 2. So maybe a mistake or a little bit of an off somewhere, but he's dropped from second to fourth.
Fagg and Celia Haug are just beginning to break away now from that G55, which is now in P3. The reason for that breaking away is because, of course, that they were fighting over that P3 position, which caused them to be just a little bit slower. But now, Stevianart, you would expect to try and get onto the back of the Celia Haug KTM Crossbow.
Lost a little bit of time, and I do believe this is where we're going to...
Oh, look at this.
Yeah, this is actually where Marinek loses P3, but he had already been repassed by Celia Haug at that stage and left the door very much wide open.
And I have to say, gave him racing room. Didn't turn in on him. There was no contact there whatsoever. It was a great overtake, wasn't it? And healthy respect from both of the drivers as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's allowed the two drivers to continue. Both of them live to have to fight another day, as we're in this race. As Charlie Fagg continues to pull away, setting purple sectors in sectors 1 and 2 on this lap. He is pulling away from the second place driver, Celia Haug.
Celia Haug knows that he's going to have for company very, very shortly, that Ginetta G55 of Niels Stevianart. So there is the number 8 Ecris BMW then. That's another one that we expect to move further up the order. That car being driven by Max Cobalt. In the first stage of this race, the Ecris Motorsport M4 GT4 car. Such a fantastic mix of cars there as we zoom in on that car at the moment. It's currently running in P9, and the next in the target sights is the number 71 car, the Scuderia Villorba Corsa Maserati GT4 of Paolo Meloni, another silver driver as we have a spin.
And is that the... that is Silly Haug. Yes, he has spun from third place.
So Mad Silly Haug then is dropping down the order following that spin. Here comes the replay.
He's gone completely off.
Oh,
He's
look.
lost the back end long before the exit of the corner.
But what did for the 64 car was getting on the grass initially, because that's what, yes, you're absolutely right, the car was sideways but lost all grip when it was out onto the grass. So now it has returned. And where is that car in the order now?
Lost 10 seconds, they've lost 10 seconds and dropped well down the order. Another car that's had actually a poor start to this race is Ivan Vlachkov. Started 13th, 7th row of the grid, actually lost several positions in those first couple of laps. 17th at the moment. And also Engelmeyer hasn't really made the progress. We thought he made 10th place at the moment, but there's still 44 minutes and 45 seconds of this race still to run as they come through the top end of this circuit. Is a long, winding turn 5.
That'll be winding.
Yeah.
As opposed to winding. Someone's belted you in the belly. Sorry.
We do have a move. Yeah.
Oh, this is for P2. This is for P2. All of a sudden, that Ginetta G55 is under real pressure now from Lennart Marianek. Experienced driver, of course, Lennart Marianek. We've seen him in a number of GT categories. He's really putting the pressure on. The Ginetta ahead, the Ginetta being driven well, but is having to defend currently. And we expected the Ginetta to get on terms with the P1 driver, but hasn't done so.
And one thing we need to look at as well, that spin for Silly Haug, which kind of slowed up the drivers behind him who had to avoid him,
yes,
has actually allowed Charlie Fag to get a 5.1 second lead.
He's up the road, isn't he?
And Silly Haug had to lift off slightly, and that's kind of what has brought Marianek back into the picture, and he's not going to let this go anyway. He's going...
Oh!
Not quite there, but there was never really a move on there. But what it is doing is just trying to distract the driver in front, play in his mirrors, trying to get him to make a mistake, make an error, maybe miss a braking point, go a little bit wide in the corner, and that's what can open the door. It's all part and parcel of trying to make that move.
Another one really to watch here is Gabriella Piana, look, in P4 now, who's in any moment now. Marianek is going to be in, unless Marianek gets this overtake done, he's going to be hunted himself, and that is going to play into the hands of the CMR Ginetta G55 of Stevenart, who's going to be able to escape up the road, because Marianek will be thinking about defending against Gabriella Piana in the Porsche, as you can see, who is now in P4.
And also, as we saw yesterday with Charlie Fag, the move to actually to win the race, that came by just following the two cars in front as it gets a little bit feisty down in the start-finish straight.
That's the battle for P6, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So
that's Saba Moore, who was actually taken out in that battle for the lead yesterday, and it is Paolo Meloni car. Charlie Fag was running in third place, and actually the two drivers up front, one of which is Saba Moore and the other which is Engelmeyer, took each other out, and all of a sudden it was gifted race victory.
Yes, you're right. So we continue to watch wherever you look through the grid of cars there. Lots of action going on, and the chase being led by Charlie Fag at the moment. Bank this, if you will, 8 seconds up the road. 8 seconds. That is a huge amount to have created in but the first 9 minutes of this race. A lot of that has been gifted by the spin earlier on from the crossbow, which of course slowed everyone behind. Also making progress. You've got to keep an eye on Cobalt in the Ecris BMW. You can just see that coming into the back of the picture any moment now. There it is. The Ecris Motorsport BMW. The more these two are fighting ahead, it's playing into the hands of Cobalt.
Charlie Fag, such as the fighting between Silly Haug and Marianek, Charlie Fag was able to pull 1.5 seconds out in second alone, and it's
drama for the 26 car. It is. That's the G55 of Niels Stevenart is in trouble there.
Was that brakes or engine?
Well, he's out of the car. This is going to be a safety car for sure.
Absolutely. The car's on fire. The car is absolutely on fire.
Stevenart is out of the car. Everything is fine. But, of course, that means that his race is done and dusted. Bear in mind, was in the P2 position. That has really caught light now. That's more than just brakes. I can tell you, underneath the bonnet.
Get out of that car.
Get out of the way. The marshals will attend to that. Safety car has been deployed just when we thought there could not be any more drama in GT4.
Look at this. This is bad for this car. The marshals need to get there quicker, but they also they need to do it very, very safely as well.
Well, of course, they're all trained, aren't they, in the art of being able to do this as safely as possible. But that really has taken hold of that car now. And
you need more fire extinguishers.
Sorry to say, yes, you're going to need more than that. And then the fire crew on the scene straight away. And, well, Stevianart is out, and, well, it's actually been red flagged now. So the safety car was called initially, but now the race has been red flagged. Well, the drama continues in the...
under the car, boys, under the car.
This GT4 European Series Northern Cup Race 2. What drama.
And that is one destroyed car. That is a KTM Expo GT4 that's probably not going to run. Or
that is a Ginetta.
I'm looking at the wrong car.
You are. Yeah. That's a Ginetta, I'm sorry, that has been extinguished now. And... oh, careful in terms of opening that bonnet, because of course we can see the moment you see what happens is once air is given into that engine compartment, it causes almost like a little backdraft, doesn't it? But it's fully trained fire people there that know exactly what they're doing, and they realise now that it's safe to be able to lift up the bonnet of that car. Thankfully, the driver got out very, very quickly indeed, and well, that Stevianart car was running in a very, very important points-paying position. But now, as you can see, driver out of the car. And, well done to Stevianart for jumping out of that as well as he did. But
my mistake with Sillyhaug is he has actually dropped down to 9th place somehow along the line. And he's out of the battle for that 2nd place. So he's disappeared. They must have had an incident at somewhere along the line. But that's the Stevianart. That's done.
Well, you say that.
Well, at least the internals are probably done.
I was going to say it's certainly not going to be making the restart. That's fair. They're the trained marshals and fire crews there on the scene of that straight away, and. So the Ginetta GT5 then in real trouble. That's turns 10 and 11, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, the Audi S's. And it's not something you ever want to see.
Nah, of course not.
And what's interesting now is the clock's still counting down.
Here it comes.
Yeah, that engine's gone.
I mean, there was no, it just exploded, didn't it? There was no contact that provoked it or anything like that. And Stevianart very soon realised that, hey, I'm in trouble here.
Well, I think he's probably the cockpit. He's actually getting smoke into the cockpit.
Well, absolutely. There. And did you see, as you look now, you can see that. I wonder whether it's a fuel line that's gone, because there is fluid coming out of the back of the car. And the car, look, it slides now.
It's an oil line.
I wonder whether it's sliding on the fuel. And Stevianart very quickly realising, hey, I'm going to dump this and get out. And well done to him for so doing. Good to see that replay.
Now, even though we are under red flag, the clock is still counting down. So there's now 37 minutes left in this race.
What will probably happen is race control will make a decision with regards to the remaining duration of the race. Bear in mind, Lee, that we have to have a driver change.
Yeah, absolutely. There's supposed to be a mandated driver change, or a mandated pit stop at least, for a 10-minute gap in the middle of this race. And actually, as with the safety car yesterday, which delayed the pit lane window.
Yes.
Because obviously you can't do the driver changes in under safety car. It has to be under green flag conditions. So depending how long it takes to get this car cleared and moved off the circuit, and they're going to have to lay down dust on that end of the circuit as well, because now on that part of the track going on the run into the chicane, through the chicane,
which is a critical point, and where we have seen overtakes.
And there's going to be lots of oil and dirt, and now in and around where this part of the track is pretty fire extinguish on the...
To be fair, where that car is situated and where it's parked, it's on the outside of the exit,
not critical,
isn't it? That's not so critical, but you're absolutely right. You make a fair point that you can see the extinguishant fluid that has been dumped, of course, all over the circuit in terms of sorting that fire out and getting it getting it extinguished as quickly as possible. As Stevianart just looks on in absolute bewilderment, having done such a good job. And
yeah, that's what I mean when I'm talking about the
right.
fire extinguishing, because that's actually going right across the chicane.
Yes.
Because if you can see, it's actually kind of a downward flow.
Yes, well, there's a little bit of banking on there, isn't there?
Yeah. So it's not going to be a case of just clearing the car. They actually have to completely clear that part of the circuit. So we could be looking at quite a bit of a delay here, unfortunately.
Well, the clock is still ticking, as you've said, and race control will decide. What they will most likely do is reduce the race duration accordingly. What should also be borne in mind here is that it's a very, very packed schedule today. And this is the first event on track, a competitive event. We've had some free practice for the DTM cars, but this is the first real race, and therefore every other part of the schedule, which has, live broadcast like this, and is therefore critical, they will decide what they will do with regards to the duration of the race. And as soon as we get any information, we will bring that to you. At the moment, there's nothing showing on the timing screen. And our message board, which is updated very, very regularly. And there is the track sweeper. It doesn't look like a track sweeper. It looks like an innocuous van. But trust me, at the back, underneath the rear, there is a sweeper mechanism that will be ready to clean up that circuit once that Ginetta G55 is put onto the low loader and taken back to the paddock. And it's going to be more than a few spanners needed to put that car back into race condition for the next round of the Ginetta, the next round of the GT4 European Series Northern Cup race.
Which is in Nürburgring, I think it's about 4 or 5 weeks' time or something like that. So
well, we're reaching the sharp end of the championship, aren't we? With just 2 rounds left before the championship is drawn to a close. And it's been very, very successful this year with...
Just a quick note, actually, Dave.
Yes.
Just before the red flag, there was an investigation there between the 93 car, that is the Manuela Costa Maserati, and it was an incident between that and the number 16, the number 16, the Christian Danner car,
which, of course, Christian Danner would be the second driver in this, so it wouldn't have been Christian Danner in the car at that time.
It's Bernhard Leber in the Porsche Cayman car, and Gostner would have got a drive-through penalty.
Oh.
So I don't know if that was actually taken just before the red flag. I don't see her on the top 24 positions in her timing screen.
Which Manuela definitely was, because she'd made up places. Oh.
She was in 20th or 21st or something like that. So I'm assuming she may have actually taken the drive-through penalty just before the red flag came out.
I think you're right. Stevianart then escaping from that car, as you can see. Very dramatic moment for him. Smoke billowing into the cockpit of that Ginetta.
In hindsight, you might say it probably would have been better if he'd driven straight on into the gravel trap as they were approaching the chicane. But hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Of course. And at the end of the day, neither me nor you are sitting in that car where, truthfully, if that was me, it would have been dumped.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I'd have done exactly as Stevianart has done. Get out of the blooming thing, because... And thankfully he did. Look at the smoke. It really billowed out of that. And Stevianart then makes his way to safety, and well done to him for that. And at the end of the day, whatever inconvenience it is to us in terms of the race having to be delayed,
I think it is more of an unfortunate thing, because it meant we'll probably have a slightly extended red flag, because there is now the fire extinguisher that's gone across the circuit as opposed to maybe being maintained in the gravel trap. But you know what? These things happen. You need to make sure, and actually, you also need to take into account the drivers. The entry point, the gap in the barrier to get rid of dropped cars is actually near enough where Stiviat has actually parked this car. So they've probably been told in the driver's briefings exactly where the gaps in the barriers are.
Of course.
And he's parked as close to it as possible. It's just unfortunate.
Can I tell you something though? That wasn't high on his list of priorities.
No.
He was thinking, do you know what? I'm not worried about the pay and display. I'm getting out of this.
But I think for a lot of drivers, it's one of those things ingrained in them. A lot of the time they will actually go the closest to where they can, because it's not just where the escape point is. It's actually an escape point for the drivers as well to get off the track as quickly as possible.
Of course. Well, thankfully, Stevie are out of the car, all absolutely fine. The one person that you perhaps have to feel a bit of sorrow for in this is Charlie Fagg, who had built himself some 8, nearly 9 seconds of margin before the safety car was called for. And therefore, that margin of comfort that he had right at the front of the pack in the number 60 car, that Maserati MCGT4, is gone, isn't it? Because whatever happens with regards to the restart of this race, and Lee alongside me is absolutely right, the clock is continuing to count down. Sometimes during a red flag series or a red flag interruption, we do see the clock pause, don't we? But on this occasion, the clock is continuing to run, and I suspect that the reason for that is because of the tightness of the schedule, that they've got to keep doing that.
Yeah, I think it's more of I think generally on race days,
yes,
you will see the clock continue to count down.
Right.
And I think the only time the clock will actually stop is in the main event. So a DTM or
now, this is interesting.
1.
If I can interrupt you, driver changes are being permitted now while the cars are in the pit lane.
That makes sense.
It does make perfect sense.
Because the entire field, because we're under red flag, the entire field is in park firma. They are all in the pit lane. And we are in the part of the race where we would have actually had the mandatory pit stops now anyway. And if you notice that has only just flashed up a few moments in the last 30 seconds. Which is when 20 minutes of the race had elapsed.
Yes.
And that's actually the very point where the mandatory pit stops would have actually begun anyway. So now that we're actually in that window, and chances are we're probably going to have a red flag.
Let me interrupt you again, because the restart has been confirmed for 12 minutes past 10.
I was actually going to say we're going to have a red flag for at least another 5-10 minutes, and that's 6 minutes ahead.
Hey.
So that will actually take us pretty much to near the end of the pit stop window.
So from that point of view, it's worked perfectly, hasn't it?
Yeah. Again, it's not just getting this car out of the way. As you see, that massive awash.
Yes.
Once that car is cleared, they then have to try and clear that, get dust on the track, but also where the oil has been dropped on the entry into the chicane as well. That needs to be dust.
In fairness, we have seen that track sweep vehicle has gone out already in anticipation of having to do that. So, you know, the safety team here at Zandvoort doing a great job. Here we can see the driver changes going on then, because it has been confirmed that the driver change can happen now.
And that's Charlie Glue getting into the race leading.
Charlie's getting out of the car. Phil's getting in. You're right.
That is Phil Glue getting into the race leading Maserati.
Now, to be fair to, Charlie had done a great job, hadn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
And had built up a really very, very comfortable margin. Phil now is potentially going to be under pressure from the restart, isn't he?
He most likely will be. It depends really on how good of a start he gets. Willem Meyer is going to be getting into the number 34 car in second place. But of course, who was in third place was Gabriella Piana in the Orange Vision Porsche Cayman. That's going to be Razvan Umbaresco.
And now Umbaresco is going to be one to watch here, I think, because he's going to sniff the opportunity of a better than P3 place available.
I think what we're going to see is actually probably a battle between Meyer and Umbarescu.
Yeah.
And it might
play into the hands, won't it, of Phil Glue?
As was what happened in the first part of the race, where Charlie Fagg was able to get away because there was such a phenomenal battle between second, third, to a lesser degree, fourth place as well.
We've also had confirmed that it will be a safety car restart at 10:12. So yeah, that's expected, isn't it?
That's expected. We'll generally find that in regulations under a race restart, and we see that in pretty much all forms of motorsport nowadays. Right. Anyway, it tends to be the first lap after a red flag restart will generally be a safety car. It
might also be, just looking at the amount of fluid that is over that chicane, it might also be that the safety car stays out for a couple of laps potentially, just to give the drivers and allow the drivers to get used to what the track surface is through that turns 9 and 10.
Absolutely. And one thing, as you mentioned about the track sweeping, there is already laid some dust actually where some of the oil was down on the engine. Now they just have to wait. But the important is they have to actually clean the entire breadth of that part of the circuit.
Because that part of the circuit is, we've seen some overtakes there, haven't we? Particularly going into that part.
But it's also where the traction point is.
Of course.
Because that's where it's in the middle of that chicane where you get your foot down to get going again. So
which is the potential, of course, now with that fluid down there, you put your foot down, you see the back end disappear on you.
Multiple back ends disappear.
Multiple back ends, yes.
This could end up being like a rerun of the Blues Brothers film.
Drifting through through the turns, which is not desirable. And there you can see the track sweeper. Now, as I said to you, it looked like an innocuous, ordinary van, but no, it's got very sophisticated sweeping and hoovering capacity in that van, as you can see, and the track team doing a great job in terms of re-cleaning that track. It should also be said, as we get a great view of the surface here, that the track surface here at Zandvoort is new in comparison to last year.
Yes, it was resurfaced at the beginning of earlier on this year. So it is very much a new surface, and it, in one sense, it delivers an awful lot of additional grip. And it was very bumpy last year as well. But an awful lot of chemicals are also coming through the surface. We've had multiple rain showers this weekend, and Kenyon again last night. So this track has been completely green.
Yes.
So a race restart.
What a good job that sweeper is doing.
But I think a race restart for 12 minutes past is probably a bit optimistic because it's already 11 minutes past now.
Yeah.
Right. So we may actually be another 4 or 5 minutes added to the potential restart.
I urge you, for more information with regard to the GT4 European Series, to check out the excellent website that is available. That will give you the details of all the magnificent cars and all the drivers, as well as we look at the number 8 car. Now, this has played right into the hands of the number 8 Ecris Motorsport, which in the first part of the race, of course, was driven by Max Cobalt. But Max Cobalt now has given way to Ricardo van der Ende, and Ricardo will be feeling that there's a great opportunity here because, he's further up the order than expected.
One thing the drivers need to be reminded of, and because of the nature of the driver changeover under red flag, this would have been drilled into them. Make sure you change the switch in the transmissions box,
which sends the information via transponder to us in terms of driver identification. What I never realised, and you made me aware of yesterday, is actually that can be penalised.
Yeah.
You can be penalised for not having done that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually getting a safe. The pit lane is now.
I'll tell you what, they're out.
I must admit, I'm quite surprised, but well done, congratulations. And yeah,
I have to say, credit is due to the team here at Circuit Park Zandvoort.
Well, something you said a moment ago, which I think is probably right. They probably won't do one slot. I think they're probably going to do 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And as you can see, we have the timing screen we have now. The names are changing, so the drivers have paid attention. They have changed their ID on the transponder, which a lot of drivers were called up on yesterday during the race.
And initially, if that happens, then you're given a warning, aren't you, to do that and make sure your driver does that. But the bit that I didn't realise that you informed me of is that if the driver doesn't do that, they can actually be called into the pit lane to do that, which of course ends up effectively being a kind
of drive-through penalty.
Drive-through penalty, doesn't it? So the cars then are on their way and they're being led around by the safety car, and we will see whether it is just 1 lap behind the safety car or whether it's more than that. I suspect it might be more than that, just to allow the drivers, A, to get the tyres back up to operating temperature, B, for them to get used to what are changing conditions through turns 10 and 11 now. And also, what we often find with the safety car is that they'll do 1 lap at the pace that's going at the moment, then gradually will increase the pace of the safety car. So once again, the drivers are beginning to get back, heading towards a decent racing speed.
So I'm thinking if it continue at this pace and then slowly increase and maybe do a second lap, we're probably looking at maybe a 17-minute dash. To the flag.
Yes, I think
we're at 20, just under 22 minutes to go in this race. So it's at this speed, it's probably going to take 2.5, maybe 3 minutes to do this safety car lap. If you take into account a regular fast lap as a minute 45, a minute 50, that kind of range. So 3 minutes to do the first lap, and then probably 2 minutes or 2 minutes 20 to do the second safety car lap. If they go green, then you're probably looking at a 17-minute run to the flag for the rest of this race.
Well, then the drama, which was brought about by that Ginetta G55 catching fire and was hastily abandoned between turns 10 and 11 in the Audi S's. Driver all absolutely fine, but the clear-up operation has had to go on. Initially, it was a safety car deployment, and then very quickly realised that it would have to be red flagged. The cars were taken into the pit lane, and whilst in the pit lane, then the driver change happened, which was eminently sensible, exactly the right thing to do. So now we have the second driver out, and we have the red and yellow stripe flag, Lee.
Yeah, that is the oil on track, the slippery surface flag. So while the people here at Zandvoort have done a great job to try and clear it as much as they can, and there's still, you can see there is still some residue on the circuit. It's not maybe as treacherous. What's interesting actually at this chicane, where you have that residue, is normally a lot of drivers will actually try and hop that curb on the entry into that to try and get a quicker line. Now, if you do that, it actually brings you almost in line. As you've seen, some of the drivers actually drive through the residue. So you might need to really think about altering your line into that chicane. So you'll take you'll go deeper into the corner, go further around the first part of the chicane, take a narrower line on the exit, but actually avoid a lot of the residue.
I don't get a lot of things right, but on occasion when I do, it's quite satisfying. Safety car is giving them another lap around. We had a close-up of the number 16 Momo Megatron team Bartrak's car, which is being driven by Bernhard Laber in the first part of the race, but now in the car is one Mr. Christian Danner.
He's had a bit of a career.
He has. He's down there in P23 at the moment. And one thing you can almost guarantee, that we won't be able to see it with the crash helmet on, is that Christian Danner will be smiling, because he's never happier than when he's behind the wheel of a racing car. Super guy.
Doing the trophy presentations this week for Audi TT Cup as well, which is a nice thing for the
There is. Just as I mentioned it, our cameraman zooms in on the Pro-Am car that is number 16, as I mentioned, being driven by Christian Danner, hugely experienced racing driver and a thoroughly good guy.
Of course, not the only driver of Formula 1 history here today. It's because Guido van der Garde in the
Audi Sport TT Cup.
Audi Sport TT.
Didn't do as well yesterday as I thought he would.
No, I was actually quite surprised. And of course, later on today, young Max is.
Yes.
Max, of course, being
Max Verstappen, who of course is delighted to be back here, and was so successful in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, and elevated straight to Formula 1, and now has become a real megastar. And very interesting to note that the Max Verstappen merchandise stands here in the paddock as well. Of course, he's hugely loved here locally, as you would expect. Safety car is going to come in this lap, so we will be back to racing. And Leo Gorman, you're very nearly correct as well, because with 18 and a quarter minutes left of this race, you're going to be pretty spot on. It's going to be about a 17-lap dash for cash.
Yeah, I think by the time they actually, the length of time it'll take them to get round, they get down the back straight, in through the chicane in the final corners, and then line up 2 by 2, it's going to be 17 minutes pretty much on.
May I just interject here and suggest that all the drivers bunched up together, everyone wanting to make up as many places as they possibly can, with all the cars so tight together, it might be very incident-packed the first couple of laps after the safety car has peeled off. So the safety car's on its way now. It's the responsibility of Phil Glue to back them all up. Phil Glue will give it a footful around the Ari Lyondike turn number 13, onto the start-finish straight already. The P2 car, which is driven now, the number 34 car.
And Phil Glue got himself a 1.4 second gap in that, as we see it change there.
Now, the one to keep an eye on here, in my opinion, is the 111 Porsche that I mentioned of Umbrea. So there is our race-leading Maserati, driven by Phil Glue. In P2, it is the number 34 Maya car, driven earlier on in the race.
Now, what was interesting about that restart, obviously they didn't go for 2x2, so it was a standard safety car restart.
Which is what I thought would happen.
But Phil Glue did get away very, very early, and I'm not sure if he probably may have jumped it or just caught Meyer completely unawares. But to have a 1.4 second gap by the time he actually got to the start-finish line is a little bit of a surprise that he'd get away that quickly.
So the one that I said will be under our eyes, Ricardo van der Ende, then around the outside of the Porsche. Or, and if he's sticking it out here and staying with it past the Porsche that was driven in the first stint of the race by Gabriele Piana, now driven by Umbrea. Brilliant overtake move that was coming from that BMW, who's making his way up the order now.
And that's not a great restart by Umberescu. He's lost a couple of places on that. Hutchinson, I think, got through as well. So Van der Ende climbing up the order.
Van der Ende is going to be one to watch here now.
And he was so quick yesterday, then got tipped away by...
tipped away by...
and then got into an incident himself later in his own stint.
And of course it was Phil Glue that tipped him away, wasn't it? So here they come then for the second time of asking. Glue, Mayer, then it's Hutchinson. Hutchinson, another one to watch. Look at the BMW.
And Phil Glue already 3.5 seconds up the road. An astonishing first lap on the green there from Phil Glue. Well done.
Umbrea is really in strife here.
I think he's struggling a lot. There's something wrong there. He's struggling a lot.
So Phil Glue then has built up a margin of some 3.5 seconds, as you can see, because we don't even see the P2 car until now.
As they come through the sweeping turns. And before heading up to the long and winding Cheviot corner.
And then down to the back of this circuit where the topography of this circuit is carved through the dunes. There is the Ecris BMW now hounding the car ahead. Look at this BMW just going for overtakes in places where you would not expect overtakes to happen. Finley Hutchinson is under pressure now.
And into the barrier.
Now that really is off and into the barrier. Can the car be stopped? Yes, it can. The number 71 car, the Scuderia Villa.
That's Tresoldi.
Yeah, it is. It's Tresoldi Maloney's car, isn't it?
And I think he's done some damage. He's gone into the... He went in left front on, didn't he? But I think has he got away with it?
Looks like he has. Here it is.
Some nasty hit. He's gone very wide.
And he's just caught. He's just caught, hasn't he? He's got one tyre out onto the grass and gravel. But that was quite an impact initially, wasn't it? I'm surprised that car has turned around and he's back on track again.
I think if he's lucky, I think if he hit it dead side on, he may have got away with it, but it's still a big hit.
Here we can see it again.
He's just gone wide.
Oh no, this is a different incident.
Yeah.
This is a different incident.
This is actually the 94.
And that being turned around is the number 33 Bullet racing car of...
That's Merrick, that's Sandy Merrick. And he was hit by Mortal.
But in fairness, Merrick was, well...
I think it's kind of front onto rear, isn't it?
But there, was the overtake ever on there?
I think
it was.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of incident you can have in the chicane from time to time. And that's Merrick. I think it's too much damage to Merrick's car. I think
that's all over.
He's done for him. He's not had the best of weekends in the...
Up the road, Phil Glue, some 5.3 seconds now. This is the car to watch, this BMW, trying to upset the Hutchinson car ahead. It's Van der Ende then in the BMW, Hutchinson in the car ahead of that Equip Vershaw car. The McLaren 570S GT4 car. And
Meyer's having a little bit of breathing room, because I do believe if Van der Ende gets ahead of Hutchinson, he's going to be on the back of the second place car very quickly. Meanwhile, Glue 5.3 seconds up the road. Different race almost. Glue's in the 1:45.9s, and Myers and Hutchinson and Van der Ende are in the 47s and 48s.
Tell you what, though, Van der Ende is not able at the moment to do much against Finley Hutchinson. Finley Hutchinson's doing a great job of putting the car exactly where he needs to, knows that potentially where an overtake could come, and now around this sweeping final turn, this is where Van der Ende might set up a go into turn number one. Looks at the inside straight away. I don't think he's quite close enough to be able to do so. Flashes the lights furiously. Finley Hutchinson now has got the line into turn number 1, and Van der Ende, whilst he was never close enough, in my opinion, any opportunity he had was denied by great driving from Finley Hutchison.
And just behind him is Reinhard Koffler looking to take 5th place away from Ander Villarino in the TFT Porsche Cayman. And they're close, only 0.3 of a second between the pair of them.
Christian Danner is coming under some pressure here. Christian Danner, who's currently running in P20. He's got the...
Lefterov, Pavel Lefterov.
Yes.
The professional driver in the Porsche Cayman Oran Vision Run car.
This is going to be a great battle to watch. Two very, very talented drivers here. Christian Danner, then hugely experienced. Pavel Lefterov getting frustrated behind the Christian Danner car. So Christian Danner then makes his way down towards the back of the circuit here. And car with a stop-and-go penalty is...
It's that 94 car that we saw hit Andy Merrick a few moments ago. So that is a 30-second stop-and-go for Akim Mortal.
I'm not surprised by that.
No, down the inside, just getting out, there wasn't enough room. It was just a bit too ambitious, to say the least.
If we're being polite about it. So we continue to watch this battle that is going on much further down the order. It is between Christian Danner, Pavel Lefterov, and the car that's going to try and take advantage here as Christian Danner is on the inside and Pavel Lefterov looks to the outside. But you bear in mind that right behind the two of them, you've got the number 51 Primus Racing Ginetta G55 of Rosen and Larsen. And it's Larsen in the car at the moment. You can almost see him rubbing his hands with invisible soap, knowing that if these two are going to be battling together, that he may be able to take advantage and move himself up a place, or maybe even two. And
that's a good effort for Larsen, who's in effect, he's an AM driver. He is in the AM class and closely following. As we see, there's a move there on the inside.
Up the inside, that was good. Racing room and respect given by Christian Danner, as you would expect. And here comes the G55 then, as I said, would try and take advantage, and sure enough, the G55 on the inside now, and Larsen surely is going to be able to get past the Christian Danner car. Indeed does so.
Well done, very well done, opportunistic and very clever.
But it was using what had happened ahead, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Because as they fought, they were slower, and therefore it was almost gifted, wasn't it?
It was intelligent driving by Larsen, and well done. Very good move by the number 112 Pavel Lefterov car. Really forced the issue, was trying many different lines in an attempt to get past Christian Danner, and eventually...
Look how long it is before we see the P2 car.
8.6 seconds.
Here comes the BMW, now turning the pressure back up on Finley Hutchison. Forgive me for interrupting you, but Ricardo van der Ende is really pushing now, and he's seeing that this final podium place, he's got 8 3/4 minutes to try and do this. He's had a couple of goes previously and it hasn't paid off. Finley Hutchison has been brilliant in terms of defensive driving, putting that car wherever van der Ende wants to try and make an overtake. It's been very good defensive driving, and well, Van der Ende then will be getting frustrated behind that car. Van der
Ende's running out of time as well. He needs to get this done as soon as possible. He's closer this time. He's much closer this time. I think he's pulling out of the slipstream a little bit too early. But will he have a run down on the third place Hutchinson car? It's touch and go. No, he has to lift off earlier because the angle in which he's actually approaching the corner it's too narrow for him to be able to kind of...
And the thing is, what you have to bear in mind through that turn one is it's banked, isn't it? So the ideal line through there is about a car's width going in.
Absolutely, and because Van der Ende is in the middle of the road, he's not committed. He's not on the outside line where he can keep his foot through the corner a little bit longer. He's not on the inside line where he can actually just dive bomb. He's in the middle, and that's not optimum to actually make that move work.
And as these two are beginning to slow because they're fighting, it's allowing Kofler to come back into the battle, I think.
And again, just less than a second behind. Oh, no, someone's off. Someone's off.
P2.
That is second place. That's Meyer, isn't it?
Yes, Meyer is off in P2. So that means that Hutchinson is elevated to P2. And it also means that Van der Ende is elevated into P3. And now, as I said, that Goff then is in car number 14. Bear in mind that Kofa is right into this battle as well now.
They're right there. I think Hutchinson probably lifted off slightly when Meyer actually went off, and it's actually brought Van der Ende and Koffler right into the game now as they come down the back end of the circuit and towards the chicane.
Well, I hope we see a replay of the number 34 car then, the RYS team Kiska car.
I can only assume it's concentration there because Glue's 10 seconds up the road.
Yes, so yes, you're absolutely right. So was out on his own. Well, there we are. The drama continues to unfold in this GT4 European Series Northern Cup Race 2 of 2 across this weekend. Here they come across the timing line then. It's Phil Glue that's leading by a huge margin of 15.2 seconds over Finley Hutchinson, the car you're looking at right now, which is P2. Then it's Van der Ende is P3. Kofler is P4. And another one off is the 64 car of, that's the Van der Neck car, isn't it?
Yeah, that was the car. That was actually Ciliai's old car. They were second place earlier on in this race.
Van der Valk is off.
And he's gone.
Beached. There's no way it's going to be recovered from there. Now, this could be another safety car because it's very close to the edge of the circuit there. And the rules state that, you know, if one car goes off there, then another one can, and therefore, surely that car is going to have to be recovered. Do you know what? With just 5 3/4 minutes left on the clock, this could be another race that finishes under the safety car.
Yeah, the actual entry point for the digger is just underneath where the camera is at the moment, if you can imagine that.
So it's much closer then, isn't it?
It's closer, but it's still going to be an effort to get the digger out onto the circuit, across the gravel track, pick up the car, track it across the gravel trap, and then get a green flag.
Well, at the moment, the safety car has not been deployed, and with just 5.5 minutes left in this race, I mean,
I can't imagine.
It's got to be.
It had to be. The car was far too close to the circuit.
The one, if we get back to racing laps, if they're able to recover that car very quickly, the one that's going to be under real pressure here now is going to be Phil Glue.
The digger will not be deployed until the grid are lined up behind the safety car. So however long it takes the field to actually line...
It's going to finish under this, isn't it?
Yeah, however long it takes... Because although the safety car is out, there's still other drivers who've not gotten to the start-finish line.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah, every driver has got to be behind the safety car, which forms what we call a crocodile, and that's where it's got to be. And they won't actually begin the recovery operation until that is the case. Then.
No, because there's always a danger, even though you're under safety car, there's always a danger of drivers driving fast back to the start-finish line in order to pick up the safety car. Whereas under the safety car, they're going to be under a much slower speed. So until until they're all under the safety car, the digger will not be deployed onto the circuit.
Okay, and we have, as you can see, the clock is continuing to count down just over 4 minutes. And race 1 yesterday finished under the safety car, and I just have a feeling that race 2 may go the same way. There is the... they're actually going to tow it off rather than get the digger. Now, this is very encouragingly, because if they can tow that car off there and pull it away with 4 minutes left, it might be that we can get just a couple of racing laps in. And that would be brilliant drama for us, because Phil Glue, who had an 11-point-something margin, well, it was 15 at one point, wasn't it?
What'd be interesting, Dave, actually, not even just that, is if they can just get the car restarted and have the driver just continue under his own pace, as opposed to...
No chance. Look at the front end, it's locked up.
No. So I wonder if is it incident then? This is not it. That's the earlier incident between the...
And that was the drive-through and the stop and go because of that, wasn't it? That's what we're seeing, the number 94 car there of Anton and Morter.
Yeah, that is a stop and go penalty from earlier on. You're absolutely right.
Some damage to that, isn't there? And
I'm surprised they haven't given that the meatball for.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
So I wonder if he's actually got... If he can get...
No way. That car is being taken away. That car is being taken away, and we are...
So we may actually get one flying lap in
I
this.
think you might be right. So, Phil Glue then. The safety car is coming in this lap. They've acted really, really quickly.
That's good, that's good. And as we saw yesterday, the race ended on a safety car, which was then called into a red flag, which is never how you want a race to actually finish. So very good job by the race director to get this cleared as quickly as possible. It's pretty much going to be one flying lap, though.
I think you're right. Not going to get any more than one, are we?
No, I can't imagine so.
Well, well done to the safety team here at Circuit Park Zandvoort for doing that very, very quickly. And the key to that was actually towing the car out of that rather than lifting it by a tractor of some description. So Phil Glue then backs them all up then going around the final turns here. You know, we might get a couple of laps. It depends when the car crosses the timing line.
No,
it's going to be close. No, it's not.
I think that would have been 1 minute 48 generally. So yeah, I think this is going to be one lap dash, and Glue's already flying away.
Yes.
But this is Van der Ende. He's got one chance now to take second place, as Koffler's actually under pressure.
Yes, Koffler is under pressure. That
from Villarino in 5th place. So that's a battle for 4th and 5th. Glue, I think he's just driven away really from the back end again. You know, as we saw under the last safety car restart following the red flag earlier on in this race. But under pressure is Hutchinson for 2nd place. He's got Van der Ende just behind him. But can Van der Ende make a move in only the last lap of this race?
So Van der Ende then, we can see in the Ecris Motorsport BMW. Forgive me just pausing here. I think we're going to get 2 laps. Because is it not the race duration plus 1 lap?
You might be right. You might be right.
So
I think the big question now is: are they furiously looking for the British national anthem in the CD box in race control?
Well, let's not worry about that at the moment because really under pressure is the car that's running in number 2, Finlay Hutchinson at the moment. But now Van der Ende, he is having to think about defending as well because Koffler is also pressuring that BMW, so he's right in the middle of this, isn't he? He's hunting but being hunted at the same time, and it's difficult to know where to put one's focus, whether it's in attack or whether it is. Every racing driver will tell you, you just look forward, you do not look back. Whatever is going on behind you, you let it happen. And
Hutchinson actually set his personal best 2nd sector on this lap. And so he was under pressure and he just put his foot down and off. Another one is the 2-2-2.
It's the Lightweiler Villarino. Villarino.
From 5th place.
But Villarino, that was very clever what he did. He came out of the gravel onto the grass and then onto the tarmac. And now we have started the final lap.
He lost it long before that corner. He was actually on the entry into that corner. He lost it because he was already kind of wobbling all over the place. But that's cost him 5th place and he's dropped right down to 23rd.
Well, he did very well to keep the momentum on and go through the gravel and get onto the grass and then the tarmac safety road.
He was the leading pro car, Dave.
I know. So, final lap then, and Phil Glue, the pace he has, and at the moment, Finlay Hutchinson is not under the pressure. He has been under. So, Glue, Hutchinson, Van der Ende then, and Koffler can do nothing to get on the Van der Ende car. There, Christian Danner goes roaring through. Christian Danner just ahead of Manuela Gosner, the lady racer in the number 93 car. And, well, very interesting line taken by Koffler there as he's looking at the Van der Ende car. This is the fight for P3.
Has it got him? Not quite there, but it's going to take him onto the far side of the circuit. He's got one opportunity left, and it's going to be down the end of this straight and into chicane.
This could be very, very lively then. The number 14 car of Reinhard Koffler then.
Not close enough.
No.
Van der Ende is solid through the chicane, and I think we're going to see, unless there's a mistake made in his final corner, I think this is going to be Phil Glue victory with Hutchinson behind and Van der Ende in 3rd place.
So Phil Glue rounds the final turn, then heads towards the checkered flag in another drama-filled GT4 European Series Northern Cup race. The checkered flag falls for Phil Glue, who takes the win. P2 is going to go the way of Finlay Hutchinson, weaving from side to side. Van der Ende nearly loses out to Koffler in P4.
That was naughty, actually, by Van der Ende coming across the start-finish line to weave across like that. Really not what should have been done. But meanwhile, Phil Glue and Charlie Fagg, another race win after they won yesterday's event as well. Fantastic weekend for them.
The rest of the cars screaming across the start-finish line.
And Villarino, 23rd place after running 5th late on. He's going to be absolutely kicking himself when he gets out of that car. But it'd be interesting to see where that incident began, because he was already losing it. As you saw in the replay, he was already losing it when he went off. So that happened in the previous corner.
Yes.
Well,
So the Ecris Motorsport team then, who will be very happy with their P3 place for Max Cobalt, as you can see. And Ricardo van der Ende, who was out in the second stint, the stint which came about by virtue of the car, by virtue of the fact that all the cars were in the pit lane. And there is our race-winning car of Phil Glue, Charlie Fagg, the Maserati MCGT4. Wow, well, certainly very different race to the race yesterday. And again, race punctuated by a safety car and what was actually a race suspension, wasn't it?
Yeah, and
here's the result in full for you. Glue and Fagg take the win with Hutchinson and Moore P2, Cobalt van der Ende P3, Angermeyer and Kofler P4. Then it was Moore and Jones, and then Meyer and Marionek, Kasperlik, Viban, then it was Piano and Ambarescu, Krayhammer and Freiberg House, and then Dall'Antonio and Fascolo taking P10 with Flachkov, Getzi, Mengozzi, Masatis and Macbeth, Ferte, Demustia, Lefteroff and Jasper. Then it was Westman, Sladecker, Grand, Muro, Larson and Rosen. Good showing from then. And Manuela Gosner getting ahead of Christian Danner to take that P19 place in the race overall.
And just an indication of just how much Phil Glue had in hand. He set that fastest lap of the entire race on the penultimate lap.
Which is extraordinary, isn't it?
Just absolutely drove away from the rest of the field. As he did in the previous restart, with as you said, taking a 15-second gap in effectively 6 laps before that safety car. As you see people on the some of the fans on the dunes today. It's not as windy as it was yesterday, not as cool as it was yesterday, so it's actually an awful lot more pleasant at Zandvoort today, and certainly no threat of rain as we had yesterday afternoon.
Don't say that.
But absolutely.
Please, Lee. It's this thunderbolt and the clouds erupt. I must explain that Lee and I yesterday, during one of the other broadcasts we had and one of the other races, in fact, it was a qualifying session, I think, and Lee just said, Dave, have you seen those dark black clouds over there? Are they going to cause us problems? I said, no, they're much further away. And just as I said that, they erupted, didn't they? Oh, heavens. All the cars then into the Parc Ferme area. And the car, I have to say, if you think the race has been entertaining, you ain't seen nothing yet. Stand by for the podium. Yesterday, that was a work of art, wasn't it? A work of something. So celebrations going down there, and Ecris Motorsport very happy. It's been a difficult weekend for them, hasn't it? Look at that. That's lovely to see. Great image indeed.
And once again, looking at Charlie Fagg and Phil Glue, faultless today. They had errors yesterday. They made little mistakes and got away with it, really.
Little mistakes.
And yes. But they were absolutely faultless today.
Yes,
and, I mean,
yes.
Had it not been for the red flag, had it not been for that safety car, who knows how far ahead they might have actually won today's race.
Well, it is. What you must say is that brilliant engineering from Ebor GT Motorsport in terms of they've got so much pace in that Maserati.
What we really saw there from the race-winning car that Hutchinson seemed to be lacking, for example, towards the end, is Hutchinson looked as if he was struggling.
Of course, P2 in that number 10 car, which is the equipped Vershaw car.
But he looked to be struggling a little on the exit of some of the slower corners late on that race, whereas the Phil Glue Charlie Fagg car,
which is the car we can see here.
They just seemed to be nailing it out of every corner, and they just had so much traction. And
yeah, it's a. Sorry, it sounds unromantic, but that Maserati's a big lump, isn't it? I mean, that is a car that has to be engineered and driven very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely, and as I said, very well engineered, very well driven, faultless today.
Well, we have had another very entertaining race from the GT4 European Series, the Northern Cup, race 2. And there you can see the Delight. Runs to the pit wall. And Vershaw very, very happy indeed. Here's super slow-mos then of the top 3. First of all, we're seeing the Ecris M4 GT4 BMW of Cobalt and van der Ende, which took the P3 position in the race overall. Then running for P2, it was the McLaren 570S GT4 for Finley Hutchinson and Moore. chased all the way to the checkered flag. And then absolutely unstoppable, the Maserati MC GT4 of Phil Glue and Charlie Fagg, who here at Zandvoort on the dunes, or in the dunes next to the North Sea, they've made it 2 out of 2 this weekend. And it should be remembered, race 1 victory. They also had a drive-through penalty and still managed to win the race.
After a clash, actually, between the race-winning Glue and the third-place man today, Van der Ende, yes. There were actually... I mean, for all intents and purposes, there were a lot fewer incidents today. I think the driving standards today were far better than they were yesterday. I think that was just unfortunate. We had that long red flag in the middle of the race due to the fire for the 64 car.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, the 26 car, the Civiac entry, which ended up being quite a long red flag, and the driver changes in the pit lane as opposed to in the normal green flag running.
So the spectators on the banks here at Circuit Park Zandvoort then have enjoyed the first race action to come, and that race action coming from the GT4 cars out on track. Up next, it's going to be race 2 for the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. You could not have 2 more distinct cars, could you? You know, the big GT4 cars, and then the super sophisticated FIA Formula 3 European Championship, which is next out on track for their race 2. And they're a fantastic shot of how this circuit, which is described as very much an old school circuit, sort of winds its way through the sand dunes here on the northern Dutch coast. A phenomenal place, it has to be said, and a phenomenal circuit which, despite its old school nature and almost unforgiving nature, I think it's fair to say, is loved by drivers. They absolutely love it. They love the challenge of it. Not necessarily always brilliant in terms of race action sometimes, because it is quite difficult to overtake, but the drivers love being on this circuit.
Absolutely, and you know, if you make a mistake here, you know, it's an unforgiving circuit. If you go off, and saw plenty of times, if you go off, you end up in the sand trap. And that is one of the things that drivers do love. They love that challenge. Unlike some of the modern circuits where you go off and it's just tarmac runoff area and you can easily rejoin, the challenge is maintaining this.
Here we go then with the podium before we have to make haste our exit to go into another broadcast booth for the next event. P3 then for the Icarus Motorsport BMW of Ricardo van der Ende. Phil Glue and Charlie Fagg then will sprint to the top step of the podium. Well, not so much of a sprint as I expected, truthfully.
Will there be a national anthem?
Don't. We had enormous trouble yesterday with the national anthem. I think the CD got stuck. Well, it's playing out. So national anthem plays out then for our race winners on the top step of the podium, Charlie Fagg and Phil Glue then. And here comes the trophy presentations. Well, teams first of all take their position on the podium, but here comes the P1 trophy being presented. Nice trophies here in the GT4 category. And P2 received their trophy. Here's Max Brahms then from the race organisation team, making the trophy presentation to the P3 drivers. The drivers all pose for the photographs, and then the champagne will be erupted up there on the podium. And here we go then for the champagne celebrations. almost as lively as the some parts of the race today. So Charlie Fagg then, you can see there with the rest of the podium setters on the podium there, enjoying their celebrations. A bottle drop from Charlie potentially here. No. So there we have it then, the GT4 European Series, the Northern Cup here at Zandvoort.
And another round of applause for our German